Hey everyone, welcome to the 309th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and my co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a really fun show for you today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is radar. We're going to talk about radar in Ring products, Apple products, and possibly future products from Plume. We're also going to be talking about Portland ditching a smart city plan. The Echo Show 10 reviews are out. We'll see what people think. Ikea has HomeKit support coming to some buttons. And we've also got some other HomeKit news. Plus, I'm going to tell you how to get rid of the worst spam that Madam A can deliver. We're also going to hear from Chris Carney, the CEO of Abode. He's going to be talking about component shortages, supply chain woes, and basically explain why you can't get a lot of your devices right now. It's a bit of Chipageddon, and it's a bit of pandemic-related port slowdowns. So all of this, plus we're going to hear from our sponsor, Very, and we'll take a question from the podcast hotline. So let's get this show started with a message from one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Very. Are you looking for an IoT development firm that has been there, done that? Very's award-winning team of senior engineers, designers, and data scientists will work with you to get your biggest IoT hardware and software projects fully operational. You can learn more at www.verypossible.com. That's www.verypossible.com. Okay, Kevin, let's talk about radar. First product, Ring doorbells. Ring is announcing a new wired doorbell, the Ring Video Doorbell Pro 2. And they're calling this 3D motion detection with bird's eye view. All of that should be in capital letters for those of y'all who care about branding. But what they've done is instead of just using a visual sensor, so a camera to say, hey, this is where we're going to set things, they're using radar. And this is part of like a shift to radar that I think is really exciting. There are obviously many different flavors with many different power profiles and things like granularity, like how fine-tuned can this be? It's unclear. I've asked Ring, but they have not yet told me what radar they're using. But what it's basically doing is it's saying, it's sending out its little radar pulse and saying, is anyone here? Is anyone here? And then when it detects something, it's like, oh, how far away is it? It's exactly what you'd expect from radar. The idea being that you can set your Ring to start recording earlier based on this information. So you could see the whole person as they walk up to the door, not just the person as they, get right there and trigger the motion sensor.
Right. Yeah. Once they're in frame on a traditional type video camera, that's when the recording starts. This will give them a little bit of information on to start recording sooner. And also it will even track the path that the individual takes to get to the doorbell, which is just interesting. I don't know if I'll use that, but it's interesting.
It is. And, they got to keep innovating. So this is going to be available for pre-order. It's going to be $249.99, and it will start shipping March 31st, 2021. I do have a little fun doorbell story for you. So
what's that?
My in-laws have a bunch of, I'm going to call them made-up candy holidays. And February is made up. It's
Halloween in March.
So Halloween is a legit candy holiday, but in February, they have something called Jack Frost. And Jack Frost on Valentine's Day at night, you will get a knock on your door. And when you go to the door, there will be a bag of candy there that's, I was going to say Halloween themed. No, that's Valentine's Day themed. And they also do this in March. They build leprechaun traps, and the leprechaun leaves you candy. I joke that they've got Pilgrim Man for Thanksgiving. The point is, for this particular holiday, my brother-in-law had a tough time because they have a Ring doorbell outside their house. And their youngest son wanted to check the doorbell to see if they could catch Jack Frost in the act. So my brother-in-law had to dress in dark clothing.
Oh, geez.
And sneak in from the side. He had to analyze how he could get in and then deliver the bag of candy. What I think is hilarious is this particular addition may cause him some problems for next year's Jack Frost.
Yeah, that would be a problem. I don't know if maybe you can disable the radar, or I would imagine you can, because with the cameras, you can typically set up motion zones and whatnot. And I would hope you could configure it to have this on or off, because it's 30 feet of distance it can measure with this radar.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Yeah. Is this a regional little holiday, by the way? Where are they from?
No, they're from like the Northeast.
When you said Jack Frost, I was going to say that because we actually have Jack Frost Mountain and whatever.
I don't know. I really feel like their family just loves candy, and any excuse to deliver candy they're going to take it.
Okay.
I don't know. I find it funny.
I'm not one to judge. That's fine. It's their diet, not mine.
Exactly. It's their dental bills. All right. So that is Radar News Piece number 1. Kevin, you have Radar News Piece number 2.
Yeah, this might be a little less exciting because it's not an actual product yet. It is a patent that has been granted to Apple. Some people are reading into this patent thinking this could be a potential new HomePod feature in the future with new hardware. It too uses radar, both for positioning and actually vital signs. Somehow we'll be able to detect vital signs. I do not know how that's going to work.
So that's actually Amazon's patent, or the rumored Amazon sleep apnea detection. Mm-hmm. That is actually using radar also, is the rumor. And I talked to a company a couple of weeks ago called Xander Cardian, and they actually literally use a type of ultra wideband radar for vital signs detection already. And they're waiting for Food and Drug Administration approval for this device, and they expect it should come sometime this summer. So this is not that far-fetched. I just want to share that with you.
Yeah, well, I wonder, and some people confuse or conflate radar with ultra-wideband, and I wonder if that's part of what Amazon is expected to use versus actual radar.
Well, there's many variations of radar. And as we talk about this, I'm realizing I need to do an explainer that will tell everybody about all the different types of radar, or at least some of the main ones, because there's about 3 or 4 different variations on the theme. So stay tuned for that, y'all. Anyway, so Apple has done this patent. It's not a real product. It makes sense. There's a lot of interest. And how do we know there's a lot of interest? Because Plume, which recently raised $270 million.
Ouch.
So much money. They, in talking to their CEO, Fari Dinar, he said, when I asked him about trends in Wi-Fi, I was like, is radar going to be a thing for y'all? He's like, yes, it is. You should expect that coming out in products. He didn't say when. It doesn't sound terribly far away, but that's really exciting. And the reason here is because we talk about motion detection, fall detection. We've talked about these on the show in the past. Wi-Fi based motion and fall detection isn't granular enough to be super accurate. And Fari actually talked about that with me because they work with a company called Cognitive. It's helpful, but it's not fine-grained enough. It's not fine-tuned enough to get to like something really useful for medical alerts or things like that they're interested in. So I will also say that with this company, the company expects to make a few kind of small acquisitions, if possible, on the R&D and technology side to both bring in new technology, but also good people. So if you are a company that is making something super innovative around Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi services, you may want to give Plume a call. And finally, on this story, I will say, tied to the funding, I'm really proud of Plume. I first talked to them back in 2015. I met Fari at a coffee shop in Austin, and we talked about the need for high quality Wi-Fi at the last meter because of all of these devices that are in our home. And he was also the person who convinced me that we would end up paying a subscription for Wi-Fi in the future. And lo and behold,
we are.
We are. Many of us have subscriptions to like an Eero Plus service, or if you're a Comcast customer, you probably have an Xfinity Wi-Fi subscription that gives you parental controls and access to Plume pods. Comcast has a deal with Plume. They use them as their mesh network product offering. So I guess I'm just really proud of this company. So yay. And they're excited about radar, and I am too. Also, yay. I know I got a little sappy there, but now let's talk about Portland, city to the south of me. Portland, Oregon has pulled the plug on a project tied to Google's Sidewalk Labs, or rather Alphabet's Sidewalk Labs project. Sidewalk Labs was Alphabet's smart city effort. They were going to do this project in Toronto. It was canceled. Portland was actually testing a spin-out of Sidewalk Labs called Replica, and it looks at mobility data. And Portland is basically saying, hey, Replica, they didn't give us enough information. They weren't transparent enough with us. We didn't understand how it got the data it did, and it damaged our trust. And so
this is like a theme here when it comes to Sidewalk Labs, smart cities. People in local government I think they want the smart cities, but they don't want the amount of data that's being handed over to the infrastructure people.
Yeah, they don't want to give up all this data on their private citizens because governments are still, especially at local levels, are pretty accountable to citizens. And citizens don't really want that data everywhere.
The Portland project, as you said, is done, but apparently last year, Kansas City trialed the Replica software, but decided not to do it. They didn't say it was for data purposes. They said they didn't have enough staff to take advantage of all of its capabilities.
Yeah. So there we go.
Is there a successful sidewalk project yet?
They're still working with a city in Utah, I think. Utah? So we'll see.
Aye
is right. That is the right notice for that. All right. Let's talk about gadgets. This is the Echo Show 10. The reviews are out. I didn't purchase this for us. I didn't either. I thought you were going to buy it. Yeah, you're like, I thought it was you, Stacey. Yeah. This is the latest and greatest Echo 10. It was announced in September, or the Echo Show 10. The big feature here was that it would have a display that was on a rotating stand, so it would move and follow you around the home.
Which sort of freaked us out when we first heard about it, to be fair.
I actually thought, it is very similar to what Facebook was propositioning for Portal. And during the pandemic, people were like, yes, I want to talk and see my family. Well,
but Portal's a little different because it was doing it via software. It couldn't move. You could move out of the frame from Portal. This has a 360-degree rotation. You can't move out of the frame.
Exactly. Or I guess you could duck behind a table. But yeah, I actually thought this was kind of neat when I saw it because I do have that pain point when I have my Echo in the kitchen and I'm talking to my mom and I want to move around. I hate sitting still for voice calls. So this lets you pace and do things in a way that might not be as upsetting for people.
True. And that will work on group calls on Amazon's platform itself and Skype and eventually with Zoom. They're going to add support for Zoom for the Zoomers out there. And what I actually do like about this rotating tracking feature is there's a benefit when you're actually interacting with the display itself, such as maybe you brought up recipes or something and you have to move around your kitchen. When you're interacting with the device, it will also follow you so that you can continue to see what's on there. It's not going to track you all the time. It's going to do it on calls and it's going to do it when you're interacting. I feel better about that. I kind of felt like it was going to be roving around, like an owl's head swiveling around 360 degrees all the time. And I'm like, I don't like that.
So when you talk to it, does it turn to face you?
Yes, it does, which is handy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's both handy and creepy. But if this is something, you're into, I've moved mostly to Google displays in my home. I don't have any Echo displays anymore, despite the fact that my father-in-law went out and bought an Echo so he could talk to us after we moved. So now I feel a little guilty. Maybe I'll do this.
$250, $250.
I might end up buying this just to make my father-in-law happy.
Yep. And don't forget, if you feel it's too creepy, there is a privacy shutter so you can block the camera.
There we go. All right. And hey, just a little Amazon update for fun. Last week we talked about the Kickstarter-like program that Amazon is doing called Build It. And just so y'all know, the sticky notes printer, the thing that Kevin and I were like, that's silly, 3 days. It's ready. They're making it.
Funded.
Yeah. So,
The other two products are not even yet at 50% funding, although they have till March 19th.
So there we go. All right. Here's an update on Ikea. And I feel bad because we didn't talk about this when Ikea launched their shortcut buttons. And this was a while back. And if you're an Ikea user and if you love buttons, these were actually adorable. They were just, you could punch the buttons and lights would turn on or whatever you wanted. You could assign.
And they have little custom stickies that you can put on there for coffee maker or lights or whatever.
Yeah, they're adorable. So
They are.
Now what's happening with them?
So I do not believe it is rolled out yet. However, in the release notes of their latest software update on February 18th, they have added support for the TROD-free motion sensor and shortcut button in Apple HomeKit. And I kind of feel bad too, because we really haven't delved into HomeKit as much as the other platforms over the years. And we are doing that. If you've heard the past show or two, I am moving everything to HomeKit. So I'll have more to say going forward. And I'm actively looking for new HomeKit stuff to do.
Nice. So if you have cool HomeKit stuff, send it to Kevin.
Maybe I need a TROD-free.
Oh, I'll send you my TROD-free. It's yours.
Okay.
Yeah, TROD-free. Coming your way, Kevin. All right.
Sweet.
And here's another HomeKit thing.
Yes, also brand new HomeKit support. The Sensibo Air will now support HomeKit and Siri voice commands. I don't think this is a product for everybody because it is basically a sensor and remote control to automate your HVAC system.
But not your central air HVAC system.
Exactly. That's why. And here in the US, I'd say central air is pretty, I wouldn't say ubiquitous, but it's pretty standard in homes, newer homes anyway. So if you have maybe in-wall air conditioners and the like, which are common outside of the US and in other places, this could work for you. And hey, HomeKit support, just add it.
Yeah. And actually in Seattle, it's very common to have those like splitters that you put on the house that vent externally that aren't like window air conditioners, but they're basically like window air conditioners. It's in-wall,
through the wall. Yep. Basically a room air conditioner that's just built into the wall instead of sitting in a window. So it's much nicer to look at, I have to say.
Yes, it's much nicer looking. I will say, especially given the wildfires, I think we're going to see installs of things like that go up on the West Coast in places that traditionally didn't have air conditioning because they didn't need it. But now they're like, we need air conditioning because we can't open our windows for 2 to 3 weeks out of the year when the wildfire smoke is here.
And those people are probably going to want air quality sensors too.
Oh, yeah. And Sensibo makes those. So
yes, they do.
We got this little package deal here. So that's a company that does that and works with HomeKit. All right. Let's talk about Madam A and Google. So in the last few weeks, I noticed that my Madam A and my Google Assistant both got super chatty with me. It's real irritating. I would ask Google, for the weather, and then it'd say, by the way.
You've already had ice cream today, Stacey. Should you have another serving?
It was not judgy. It just was letting me know that I could do other things with Google. Madam A was a little different. Madam A offered me by the ways that told me about new features, but it also was like, by the way, would you like to rate the product that you just bought? And I'm like,
No, I would not.
So, and other people reported that, Madam A would offer them advertisements, basically, like, oh, would you like to buy this product? And I was not down for that. So Google declined to comment on the record. And the folks at Amazon pointed out that, it's hard with a voice platform to do discovery. And so they're trying to do this in a way that is not intrusive. But I don't see how you can do something via a voice platform that isn't intrusive. But
yeah, it's a question of how intrusive, really. And I would hope that as these systems add more hunches or nudges, as I would like to call them, you can either turn them off or rate them and say, please don't remind me of this again, etc.
Yes, that is the hope. Now, I will say, if you hate this, there actually are some settings you could and should disable in your Madam A setup. Google hasn't done anything about product recommendations or anything like that yet, so there's nothing really I could see that you could do with Google. But with Amazon, some of the more irritating ones, you're going to go under Settings, then you go under Notifications, and then if you click under Notifications under Amazon Shopping, you're going to have a whole bunch of things that you're going to probably want to turn off. Just
like all of them.
Yeah, actually, that's what mine looks like. It is literally everything with the exception of answers to my product questions. I get a notification if I've left a question on a product, and it'll be like, hey, someone answered it, which I find useful. Okay, so In that area, you will see that you can turn off notifications for things that have been out for delivery or delivered or on their way. The reason this is useful is because sometimes Amazon will tell you something's on the way and they tell you what it is. And if it's a gift for someone, that might be kind of irritating. Plus, I think it's just irritating. You also can avoid recommendations and deals. You need to turn that off. And you need to turn off the request to rate products that you've purchased. Many of these are turned on by default. So
typical.
Yes. And there's also a segment there called low supply notifications. I was getting a lot of these like low battery notifications on some of my connected devices, like my August smart lock. When the batteries were low, Madam A would pipe up and be like, your batteries on this particular lock are low. Would you like to reorder them? And I was like, please stop interrupting me with this. I've already gotten 8 emails. To do that, you actually set that up in the devices section, not the notification section, and it's based on the individual device. So at some point when I was setting up my lock, I apparently said, yes, do have Madam A remind me about this. That was a mistake. So you can go in and turn that off inside the actual app itself for the product. So that will help you. So that's my reduce the Amazon spam tip for you this week.
I don't know if the controls are granular enough, but one thing I would like to actually be notified on is when something on my wish list is on sale. But I bet you that's too granular.
That is not an option.
Well, geez, it ought to be, Amazon. It ought to be. Hey, I'd say buy it.
Buy it? Oh.
Buy it. Well, whatever the command is.
I was like, you'd buy it? Yes. Although if you have a Madam A, this is another command you should turn off. You should actually turn off purchasing things without requiring some sort of password, just so you know.
Yes.
Okay, so that's our tip of the week. We don't really have a tip every week, but that's this week's tip.
I do have one more little news bit, though.
Tell me your news bit.
Yeah, so Google this week made a big splash by announcing features that are coming to Android 12. And while you're probably wondering that has nothing to do with what we talk about, it sort of does, because one of the new features is to get more things done hands-free with the Google Assistant on your phone. So you can actually use the Assistant to send a text. I don't care about that, but also do like home controls, set timers, alarms, etc. So your phone can be locked. It can be anywhere within voice range. You don't have to unlock it to use this. So that will be available. You can turn it off. There's a setting to enable it or disable it. But I thought that was kind of nice that you don't have to Face ID, swipe, enter a PIN or whatever if you want to have this feature.
I like it. I will probably do that because yes, although my phone is mostly unlocked, but that's because I'm mostly home right now. Ha ha ha. Okay, we're all still home. And that's it for this section, but let's go to the Internet of Things podcast hotline, which this week is brought to you by Infineon. Infineon is going to present a new extensive range of solutions for the IoT industry at the Embedded Solutions Conference 2021 on March 1st. That's going to flank the Embedded World Digital event. So this is going to cover all of the sensing categories: computing, actuating, connecting, and securing the Internet of Things. This is all virtual. You're going to find a lot of inspiration, a lot of insights on embedded solutions in action. Dun, dun, dun. You can register now at infineon.com/embeddedworld so you can discover how Infineon makes the IoT work. Okay, before we get to the question, I have to tell you how you can call us and be entered to win this week's prize.
You'll want to do this quickly because the end of the month is when we pick the winner.
Yeah, I kept saying this week's prize. It's actually this month's prize. So you can call us at 512-623-7424, and you will be entered to win a $99 smart speaker of your choice. So Amazon, Google, or Apple. So you'll be entered to win that, and we might also answer your question on the air. So let's get to this week's question. It is from Ryan.
Hi, Kevin and Stacey. My name is Ryan from Colorado. I have about a 900 square foot condo with a disconnected garage, and I am looking to get a little better Wi-Fi reception in the garage. I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate to do a mesh network or to do just a plain old extender. If you were to suggest either one, definitely some suggestions of which brands, that sort of thing would be awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Ryan. I wish you had told me how far away your garage was, because that's really relevant information. But since you didn't, we're going to just We're going to work our way out. First up, I think you should never go with an extender when you can go with a mesh. There's just no reason for that.
Spot on. And part of the reason for that is you're actually creating a second network with the extender, whereas a mesh system is all one contiguous network.
Exactly. And then you've got an extra naming SSID thing happening there. If you have devices that move between the two, I'm just shuddering. It's just messy. So don't do that.
Don't do it.
But I have found, and again, since we don't know how far apart we're working with here, we came up with some options. It may be that any mesh will work for you. I don't even know if you have a mesh network in your home. So you could try any mesh. But from a distance perspective, I have found decent success with actually the Netgear Orbeez. They go pretty far. And they also have an outdoor Orbi satellite. So what that means is you could set up the Orbi in your house as your mesh. You could put the outdoor one kind of, equidistant, even closer. I don't know.
Any place you can find an outlet.
Yeah, basically any place you can find an outlet and you're not worried of someone lifting it.
Inside the garage may work.
Well, then you wouldn't need the outdoor version.
That's true.
You're like, oh yeah, but you might be able to put it outside the garage and just hang it high. The point is, that's an option for you. And then Kevin and I came up with a way fancier option, and this may not be what you need, Ryan, but this is also applicable to anybody out there who might be looking for barns, distant, I don't want to say super distant sheds, but distant areas. And that is a professional Ubiquity system kind of designed for ISPs, but Kevin will tell you about it.
It is. Ubiquity, we've talked about them before. They play in the high-end consumer space, but also more for like corporate and ISP type deployments. So what we found is you can buy a bundle of what they call their nano stations. And what these are outdoor, well, you could put them indoors as well, but outdoor antennas. A 2-pack is under $200, and it would extend your network. Both have Ethernet ports, so you could connect one in your home to your home network right now, and then use the other one as an extender. Configuration may be tricky based on what we've read so far, because again, these are really geared towards ISPs, internet service providers, not for consumers. But having said that, people do swear by them, and the range, people have tested anywhere from 10 to 15 kilometers. I'm sure your garage is not that far away. If it is, you need to move. So this may be an overkill solution. But if you're just outside of Wi-Fi range and don't have any other options, and you really have to have Wi-Fi or network access in the garage, it's something to consider.
Yeah, your other option, it would be so expensive, but you could do it, is to do a plug-in cellular hotspot modem. Name it the same SSID and password as your home network and put that in there. But again, if it's plugged in, it's always on. I'm trying to think of it, like if it's plugged in and always on, it would work.
But you also have a monthly fee on that as well. And is it worth it at that point? I don't know. That's really up to Ryan.
We don't know what you want to connect in your garage and how important it is. So those are some options for you. Hopefully one of them will work. And I will also put in a plug for the folks on the Ubiquity message boards, because those people are freaking smart and nice. They will help you out. So, and I know they listen to the show, because anytime we talk about any sort of Wi-Fi thing, everyone calls in and they're like, hey, why didn't you talk about Ubiquity? We did, y'all. Okay. Well, Ryan, we hope that helps you. And feel free to call us back and let us know next month. You'll be entered to win next month's prize if you do so. If you want to give us a call, we're at 512-623-7424. And if you call us before Sunday night at midnight Eastern, you will be entered to win for the prize for February. Okay, that concludes this portion of the show. Please stay tuned, because we're going to talk about what is causing all the shortages and delays in your IoT gear with Chris Carney, the CEO of Abode, who is also experiencing product delays. We'll also find out how long we can expect this to be the new normal. All of this and more await you. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Very, which is a full-service IoT engineering firm. And today I'm here with Nate Strong. Nate is the VP of Client Strategy at Very, and he's here to talk to us about the IoT Maturity Model that Very has developed. So Nate, can you tell us what the IoT Maturity Model is?
Sure. Very has been developing superior products for the past 10 years. And in that time, we've seen a lot of different IoT products. This led us to develop a 6-stage model for companies to assess the maturity of their IoT products and understand the complexity that goes into building an IoT product.
All right. So could you break down that maturity model for us?
So stage 1 is embedded devices. This is a regular electronic device that's not connected to the internet. Stage 2 is cloud computing, and that's where we do all of the computing processing in the cloud. Stage 3 is where we get to IoT. That's where we combine stages 1 and 2, and the code connects the machines over a network and facilitates the communication. Most products today in the IoT space are in stage 3. Stage 4 is predictive analytics. This is exemplified by predictive maintenance in industrial IoT or recommendation engines in the consumer space. Stage 5 is prescriptive analytics. This is where we add on advanced machine learning to improve UX and really uncover new revenue stream opportunities. And then stage 6 is ubiquitous computing. This is the idea that, for example, you walk into a room and the room understands that you're there and turns the lights to your preferred setting and turns the TV on to your favorite show at that time. It's the idea that you're not going to have to do all the cognitive processing to take care of the little details, that the algorithms will understand what you need when you need them.
And why don't many companies make it to stage 5?
To put it simply, it's because IoT projects are notoriously difficult. Really, the biggest way that this is a problem is what we call the multiple PhD problem. As you build on each of these stages, you're getting more and more complexity in the level of engineering talent that you need, because ultimately you need people to be experts in multiple things. And it's very hard to get people who are multiple PhDs in mechanical engineering and data science. But at Very, what we do is we hire experts and senior engineers in these places and then push them to learn other areas and become experts in other areas throughout their time with us.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So where can people go to learn more about Very and the IoT maturity model?
You can learn more at verypossible.com/Stacey. That's VERY possible.com/STACEY.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Chris Carney, who is the CEO of Abode. Hello, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Stacey. Great to be here. How are you?
I am doing well as well. So we are here to talk about supply chain issues because I'm sure you have noticed as the CEO of a consumer electronics company, but even I, as a lowly purchaser of said devices, I think I've gotten 3 emails so far about different products that I've ordered that are delayed because of broadly the pandemic. So we'll talk about what's happening in your supply chains, what y'all are doing about this, and if there's any relief on the horizon. Just to get this started, Abode, for everyone who doesn't know, makes security systems or security products. They have a gateway, they have sensors, they have cameras, and you put all that together and you build your own home security system. You can either monitor it yourself or pay for more monitoring. So that's a lot of devices. Chris, what have you seen so far with regards to your business and the pandemic?
Sure. Yeah. So, up until the end of last year, things were pretty normal for us because we had planned ahead for the holiday season and we had, plenty of products to be sold towards the end of last year. The only thing we did see up front we had heard that the ports were getting very crowded when it came to bringing in supplies, but we really didn't see much of an impact until kind of late of 2020. And it definitely has impacted us. If you go to our store, now hopefully one of the products isn't ours, but we do have quite a few of our SKUs in a backlog status. So It's definitely impacted our business to an extent, and it started towards the end of last year, I would say, for us, that we really started noticing.
Yikes. Yeah, that's when I started getting the flurry of, hey, we can't provide your product emails. And I saw like all my smart hubs were out. So let's break down the supply chain process, because we have talked on our show about like a shortage of semiconductors. You just mentioned slowdowns in the ports. So what does it take to get a product from you to me?
It starts with, all the thousands of components that go into the actual products, and the components are made up of materials that are in demand for certain, industries, automotive being a big one, and obviously consumer electronics being another. We do have GSM modules in our products as part of all those thousands of components. And so our hubs actually have a GSM component in them. And that was one of the big products that we saw the lead times really jump on those at the end of last year. From there, once we placed the orders for these components and products, we generally had about an 8-week lead time to take all those products, make the products at the manufacturing facilities, and then get them shipped over to us. And then there's lead time, obviously, with the transportation of those products from Asia to the U.S. You can either go sea or air. So depending on what you decided to do at the time of the order, you're kind of either stuck with that or you have to make a change, which can be expensive. So, and then from there, it gets to the coast, and then it has to go through customs. And then it actually then has to be either, trucked or flown to warehouses throughout the country. And then those products, once they hit the warehouses, then have to go through e-commerce. It will go through the standard carriers, whether it's, USPS, DHL, FedEx, UPS. And then there's obviously things that can happen there too, where there's delays, whether it's weather related, and then it finally lands at your doorstep for you to use. So there's a lot of work that goes and a lot of time, and things can break in between in that time frame for the product to go from the building phase to it gets to you.
Got it. And all of this is related to the pandemic. Part of me is like, hey, if there's a shortage in components, why is that happening now?
Yeah, no, I think what happened was so in Q2 of last year, towards the end of Q1 and Q2 of last year, that's when, the pandemic really started to impact Asian companies that were producing these components, and there were shutdowns in some of these places. And so there started to become a demand issue for them to be able to provide the companies with their products. And then when Q4 hit, there was kind of a really fast bounce back of the demand for this stuff. And these companies couldn't, and they haven't been able to keep up with the demand to be able to produce these components for the products. And so we're seeing the results of that now, where there's a backlog and there's a delay. Like the lead times have doubled, in some cases tripled for the components. And so if you weren't thinking ahead in Q2 of last year, Q3 of last year to order more, then you may be in the same situation we are, where there's some components you can't get.
Okay. And is part of that because y'all are a relatively smaller organization?
Yeah, and just the fact that we really didn't foresee, because we had plenty of stock, and then when we went back to get new products made, that's when it kind of hit us at the end of last year that it was going to take a little longer. And also, by the way, the demand for the products has been much higher, and because of the fact that we are an e-commerce company, so the pandemic actually played to our favor from a sales perspective. And so we went through a much higher volume from a sales perspective than we thought we would do as well. So those two things together kind of squeezed us to where we have a little bit of a delay now in getting the products.
And I'm very curious about the boost in demand for something like home security, simply because I feel like we are in our homes all day long. I'm like, yeah. I don't need a camera to tell me what's going on. I know. So is that a function of boredom, a different type of demand? What are the use cases, or what's driving demand?
One, we were an e-commerce company, so people could buy things without having, to contact someone else to come to their house to install it. So the demand for security actually stayed pretty steady during the pandemic, kind of the height of the pandemic. And we did see a lot of people spending money on, DIY or, home improvement type projects because you're home, like you said, you're home a lot. So there's things you can do, whether it's adding our system, you actually get home automation aspect to it as well. So if you wanted to hook up Z-Wave lights or something of that sort, or your thermostats to a system, all those things work together through Abode. So we saw, basically the pandemic helped us from a sales perspective through that.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I know that I have been tinkering with more devices, so it sounds like I'm not alone. Well, if you can't get your GSM component, your cellular radio inside your device, do you just offer one without it? I mean, how do you mitigate some of this, or how do you adapt?
So we have two different types of hubs. And so we adapted a few different ways. So we do have the GSM component of the cellular radio in both versions of our product, but we did have enough of one. So we're able to basically point people towards purchasing the other hub that is in stock or was in stock. So we're able to make a move internally on our website. I mean, obviously we lose the sales for some of those, or people have to wait to get their products for the other hub if they really wanted that one. And then also we do have a cart builder. So on our website, where in our store, so if we're going through the process of looking to purchase Abode, we would go through this cart builder and we would point to products, or we do point to products that we do have in stock. So we may have, several different kinds of door sensors. So we point you to the ones that we do have, as opposed to, showing you the ones that you have to wait on. Those are some of the ways we've adapted. And we also flew and are flying all of our goods in now due to the ports issue. So, it costs Abode more money to get the component, get you your products, but we'd rather you buy them from us and get them as quickly as possible. So those are pretty much some of the ways we've been able to handle. And we've also now fixed our supply chain from an order perspective, where we're ordering much further in advance than we were in the past due to, this phenomenon that we're seeing.
And given that now we're at the beginning of 2021, we have, a hope for the pandemic, but I don't feel like we actually have a handle on it. So things feel really uncertain still. What kind of timeframes are you trying to work within when you're thinking about, like, I'm going to order a bunch of new stuff? Like, how do you lead and order products with a huge lead time given all the uncertainty?
It's definitely something where you need to have the cash flows behind you to make calls to, order more and make sure you have some cushion in your inventory levels, which we've done. From a health perspective, it would be great if the backlog of all the boats in the ports could push their way through. And I'm not really sure if that's something the government can help with, or if it's just, the companies that run these boats and, the offloading of the products. If there's a way that they could reroute them to, other ports that may not be as busy, to really push that through, I think that would help a lot of companies. And I think just in general, just being prepared as a business to be able to maybe have a longer lead time schedule, to know that these issues can happen, which I think, some companies definitely do, but for smaller companies, I think it's definitely a time to relook at that from a planning perspective and just have more stock for these times.
That's true. I feel like this has been the end of just-in-time inventory. Abode has been around for a while, but for many companies starting out, it does mean you have to raise more capital to be able to pay for these orders. But it's also difficult because you don't actually know if your product is going to succeed. I know that nobody wants to think their product will fail, but this seems like a really tough problem for any CEO to think about and solve. Do you have any advice for other leaders who are trying to walk this line?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what I mentioned. I think having the backing is really important from a capital standpoint. Also, believing in your product and figuring out a way to get the sales if you do buy too much. I think that's something that we definitely believe in our product enough to now we're ordering a lot more because we have seen, the demand tick up in these times. But overall, I just think just planning, making sure you plan for, you don't want to say plan for a pandemic, but plan like, for that rainy day. You don't want your business to be stunted by not having enough product if there is demand for it. But it is a fine line.
I think a lot of businesses are going to be focused on kind of, I'll call it increased resiliency. So, making sure you have longer lead times for orders, that sort of thing. And not just because of the pandemic. I think things like climate change, I think political uncertainty, all of these things are making or exposing how fragile our supply chains kind of are. I would love to get some insights from you on what you would like the government to do. Maybe it's your suppliers. I don't know. What would you like to see to help boost resiliency in your supply chain?
Yeah, I think like you had said, the political unrest potentially, plays a part in all of this, and just, the different treaties that are happening with, especially in Asia. So it would be good to kind of settle down and figure out what can give sustainability for U.S. companies that deal in Asia for parts. And I think that's, a lot of the U.S. business. We're essentially, 100% U.S. except for the manufacturing of our products. So, we do have one component of our business that, needs stability there. And so I think that's something that you wish that the government and people in government would take into account. It's not like we outsource our entire business. So I think, from that standpoint, you just really hope that they can help and provide some kind of, long-term pact with these countries that companies like us are dealing with.
So is there any chance that you could bring manufacturing out of some of these places for your components?
I think we could. I don't know. There's a lot of work that went into building what we have now. So for us to pivot, it's not as easy as just changing on the fly. But I think, that's something we can study and look at and see if it's realistic. But I'm pretty sure that even the big companies here still get their electronic components from overseas.
For the most part, yes, that is true. And so, and that's one of the things I've been thinking about. I'm like, gosh, Intel, Samsung, they have manufacturing capability here in the US. Should we be pushing for additional manufacturing, especially for like high-end chips or maybe even low-end chips? I don't know. Sounds like your GSM module is your problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would be on the committee pushing for that.
Okay. And as a consumer, I have to ask, my gosh, when is all of this going to be fixed already? When can I start ordering products and have my typical 2-day instant gratification delivery times?
Right. Well, I've heard different levels of advice from people that I've been reading about and talking to our people that are helping us through this. There's two trains of thought. A lot of people are saying towards the end of Q2, there should be some relief here where these companies that are making the products will have had enough time to ramp up. That being said, if there's still real big demand component going in for these things, then that could, continue this thing out through the rest of this year. So I think it's just really going to depend on how much demand there is and how many companies are kind of scaling back their production to stay within the what they can get at this point. So we're crossing our fingers that, this is like a first half of this year and we should be able to come out of it going into the back half of the year.
And hopefully as people get vaccinated, we can start spending our money on going out to eat and visiting amusement parks. And maybe we won't be like, oh, I'm going to comfort buy a whole new electronic device.
Right, exactly.
How else has the pandemic affected your business? You talked about obviously increased demand. That's good. I don't know if there's been changes in, how you're thinking about hiring, for example, because now you're like, I can go all remote, or I just don't know. How else has the pandemic shifted your thinking around your business?
Yeah, so the abode, we were kind of in some ways really set up well for the pandemic, and I'll kind of go through it. The product is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a DIY product, so do it yourself. For the most part, we do offer some some pro install help through a partner called HelloTech. But in general, you can buy the components and set it up, and it's really easy. So from that standpoint, we were good because we didn't have to go in people's homes. We also are e-commerce, which you didn't have to go anywhere except for behind your computer to buy the products. And something that you mentioned earlier, you're like, why is this security product, in demand when everybody's home? Well, there was some pretty unrestful months back in 2020 that, were happening. And I think people were a little scared for their safety. So I think our products, caught a little bit of a breeze from those things that were happening during the summer. So our security focused products were important home improvement. And then, we already had a very remote team, kind of a global team that worked remotely. So we were really set up well for something like this happening. And so, I would say, if anything, it's weird, but it kind of helped us in a way. And it also has given us the feel like, hey, we can really scale with a remote team the way we had it. And we really don't have to do anything different. If we wanted to, set up a major headquarters, this isn't something that we think is necessary anymore.
Got it. All right. Okay, Chris, thanks for coming on the show this week.
Thanks a lot, Stacy, for having me.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.